Chapter 1. The reunion nobody asked for. Mitch's POV. Mitch Adams stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror like it had personally betrayed him. The tie looked wrong. The shirt looked wrong. Hell, even his hair looked like it had staged a quiet rebellion overnight. He tugged at the knot again, muttering under his breath. Spartacus, remind me why I agreed to this. The orange tabby perched on the counter flicked its tail with the kind of judgment only cats and IRS auditors could muster. Mitch sighed. Right. Because Mom said, it'll be fun, Mitchell. You'll see your old friends. He mimicked her voice, then grimaced. Old friends who probably have 3 kids and a mortgage the size of Texas. He wasn't bitter. Not exactly. He just didn't see the point in revisiting a past that had already done its damage. High school was fine. Average grades, average looks, average everything. He was the guy who blended into the background like beige wallpaper. And honestly, he liked it that way. The tie finally surrendered to his efforts, and Mitch gave himself a nod that said, good enough. He grabbed his jacket, ignored Spartacus's silent judgment, and headed out. The reunion was held at a downtown hotel ballroom, which was a fancy way of saying room with bad lighting and overpriced drinks. Mitch walked in, scanned the crowd, and immediately regretted every life choice that led him here. Clusters of people laughed loudly, their voices bouncing off the walls like they were auditioning for a sitcom. Mitch recognized faces, some vaguely, some too well. He nodded at a few, offered polite smiles, and made a beeline for the bar. Whiskey. Neat, he told the bartender, because if he was going to suffer through this, he'd do it with dignity. Drink in hand, Mitch turned and froze. Jenny. She looked different. Older, obviously, but still stunning in that effortless way that made him feel like a middle schooler with braces again. Her hair was shorter now, styled in a sleek bob. She laughed at something her friend said, and the sound hit him like a sucker punch. 10 years. 10 years since she shattered his heart with a smile, and a you deserve someone who can be there for you. 10 years since he learned that promises were just pretty words people used before they left. He told himself he didn't care. He lied. Jenny glanced around the room, her gaze sweeping past him once, twice, and then moving on like he was part of the wallpaper. Mitch felt the sting before he even processed it. She didn't recognize him. Not a flicker of recognition. For years together, and now? Nothing. He laughed, quiet, bitter, and set his drink down. No dramatic exit, no scene. Just a quiet retreat before humiliation could finish the job. Outside, the night air was cool against his skin. Mitch shoved his hands in his pockets and walked toward his car, each step heavier than the last. He wasn't angry. Not really. Just tired. Tired of hoping for something that never came. Tired of being the guy people forgot. By the time he slid behind the wheel, he was already laughing at himself. Idiot, he muttered. What did you expect? A grand reunion? Fireworks? Please. Spartacus would be thrilled. More lap time for him. Mitch started the engine and drove off, leaving the ghosts of high school and Jenny behind. Or at least, he tried to. Jenny's POV. Jenny Carter adjusted the strap of her purse and scanned the ballroom for the 100th time. She'd spent weeks planning this reunion, making sure the decorations were tasteful, the playlist nostalgic but not cringeworthy, and the food decent enough to keep people from bolting early. It was supposed to be perfect. She smiled at her friends, laughing at a joke she barely heard. Her mind was elsewhere, searching. Who are you looking for? Her oldest friend, Marcy, asked, arching a brow. Jenny hesitated, then shrugged like it was nothing. Just wondering if Mitch Adams showed up. Marcy's expression froze for a beat before she exchanged a look with the others. Jenny, he was here. Jenny blinked. Was, yeah. Marcy's voice softened. He left about an hour ago. Jenny's stomach dropped. What? Why didn't anyone tell me? Marcy's lips pressed into a thin line. Because you walked right past him. Twice. Jenny felt the blood drain from her face. No, I didn't. You did. Another friend chimed in, her tone edged with disappointment. He was standing by the bar. You looked right at him and kept walking. He put his drink down and left. Honestly, Jen, the pain in his eyes. It was obvious. Jenny's throat tightened. She remembered the guy at the bar, tall, broad shoulders, quiet. She hadn't looked closely. She'd been too busy playing hostess, too busy making sure everyone else was having fun. Oh my God, she whispered. I didn't even recognize him. Marcy crossed her arms. You used to brag about him, remember? How he was the sweetest guy you'd ever met. And tonight, you didn't even see him. Jenny swallowed hard, shame clawing at her chest. She'd imagined this night so differently, catching up, maybe laughing about old times, maybe something more. Instead, she'd blown it spectacularly. Her friends drifted back into conversation, leaving Jenny standing there with a smile that felt brittle. She excused herself, stepping into the hallway where the noise faded behind her. She pulled out her phone, staring at the blank screen like it held answers. Should she text him? Call him? Would he even want to hear from her? Her mom's voice echoed in her head. Men will put up with a lot, but disrespect? Forget it. Jenny closed her eyes, the weight of her mistake settling like a stone in her stomach. She'd wanted a second chance. Instead, she'd made sure there wouldn't be one. Chapter 2, Ghost in the Rearview. Mitch woke up the next morning to the sound of Spartacus knocking something off the nightstand. A thud, a pause, then the unmistakable crash of his phone hitting the hardwood floor. Seriously? Mitch groaned, rolling over. The cat stared at him from the edge of the bed, tail flicking like a metronome of judgment. Fine. You win. He scooped up the phone, checked for cracks, and then noticed the time. 8:12 a.m. Saturday. He had no plans, which was exactly how he liked it. Except, his brain wasn't cooperating. The reunion replayed in his head like a bad movie he couldn't turn off. Jenny's laugh. Jenny's face. Jenny's eyes sliding past him like he was invisible. He sat up, rubbing his temples. "You're an idiot," he muttered to himself. "You knew this was a bad idea." Spartacus meowed, which Mitch interpreted as agreement. The coffee maker gurgled in protest as Mitch poured water into the reservoir. He stared at the dark liquid dripping into the pot, wishing it could wash away the memory of last night. He wasn't angry at Jenny. Not really. She didn't know him recognition. People change. Life moves on. But damn, it hurt. For years together. For years of shared secrets, late-night talks, stupid inside jokes. And now? Nothing. He carried his mug to the couch, Spartacus hopping up beside him like a furry therapist. Mitch scrolled through his phone, ignoring the flood of reunion photos on social media. Everyone looked happy, glowing in nostalgia. He didn't. By noon, Mitch had convinced himself to do something productive. Laundry, dishes, anything to drown out the noise in his head. Halfway through folding a stack of shirts, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it, thumb hovering. Spam? Work? The message popped up. "Hi, Mitch. It's Jenny. Can we talk?" Mitch froze. The letters blurred for a second, like his brain refused to process them. "Jenny." He set the phone down like it was radioactive and walked away. The rest of the day was a battle between curiosity and self-preservation. He wanted to reply. He didn't trust himself to reply. Promises were easy. Keeping them, that was the hard part. By evening, Mitch sat on the balcony, nursing a second cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The city hummed below, oblivious to the storm in his head. Spartacus curled at his feet, purring like nothing was wrong. Mitch stared at the phone again. Jenny's message sat there, patient, like it knew he'd cave eventually. He didn't. Not tonight. Instead, he whispered to the empty air, "I'm not that guy anymore." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. Chapter 3. Damage Control. Jenny stared at her phone like it had personally betrayed her. The message sat there, unanswered, mocking her with its silence. "Hi, Mitch. It's Jenny. Can we talk?" She'd sent it yesterday. Nothing. Not even a read receipt. Jenny tossed the phone onto the couch and paced her apartment, her heels clicking against the hardwood like an impatient metronome. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "He's probably busy. Or maybe he didn't see it." Her inner voice laughed at that excuse. Mitch wasn't the type to ignore messages by accident. If he hadn't replied, it was deliberate. Jenny stopped pacing and pressed her palms against the cool surface of the kitchen counter. She hated this feeling, the gnawing guilt, the weight of regret that had been sitting on her chest since the reunion. She'd imagined that night so differently. She'd pictured walking in, spotting Mitch, sharing a smile that said, "Hey, look at us now." Maybe even laughing about old times. Instead, she'd walked past him like he was invisible. Twice. Her friend's words still stung. The pain in his eyes was obvious. Jenny squeezed her eyes shut. She'd heard him once before, when she broke up after graduation. She thought she was doing the right thing back then. Long-distance relationships never worked, and she didn't want to hold him back while she chased her dreams. But seeing him last night, or rather, not seeing him, made her realize something brutal. She hadn't just broken his heart. She'd erased herself from his life so completely that now, she was the stranger. By mid-afternoon, Jenny decided sulking wasn't an option. She needed a plan. She opened her laptop, pulled up the local business directory, and typed in the name of the publishing company she'd heard Mitch worked for. It wasn't stalking, she told herself. It was research. The company website popped up, sleek and professional. She scanned the staff page, heart thudding when she saw his name, Mitch Adams, senior editor. Senior. He'd done well for himself. She felt a flicker of pride, and then a pang of guilt. She hadn't been there to see him grow into this version of himself. Jenny hovered over the contact form, debating whether to send a message through official channels. Too formal. Too weird. She closed the tab and grabbed her phone again. Maybe a call would be better. Direct. Honest. Her thumb hovered over his number, still saved after all these years. She never deleted it. She pressed call before she could overthink it. The line rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then his voice, calm, deep, familiar, filled her ear. "Mitch Adams." Jenny froze for a beat, then forced words out. "Hi, Mitch. It's Jenny." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, he spoke. "Jenny." His tone was neutral. Not warm. Not cold. Just flat. "Yeah." She laughed nervously, hating how awkward she sounded. I just wanted to say hi. And apologize." Another pause. She could almost hear him choosing his words carefully. "For what?" he asked. Jenny swallowed hard. "For last night. I didn't recognize you. I should have. I'm sorry." His voice was steady, but distant. "It happens." Jenny winced. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You didn't," Mitch said quickly. Too quickly. "Look, I'm busy right now. Take care, Jenny." And just like that, the line went dead. Jenny stared at her phone, her heart sinking like a stone in water. She'd wanted a conversation. She got a wall. Jenny sank onto the couch, pressing the phone to her chest. She wasn't giving up, not yet. But for the first time, she wondered if she'd already lost him for good. Chapter 4. Lines in the sand. Mitch stared at his phone long after the call ended, the silence in his apartment louder than any argument. Jenny's voice still lingered in his head, soft, apologetic, almost desperate. He hated that it stirred something in him. Not hope, not anger. Something worse, confusion. He set the phone down and rubbed his face. Nope, he muttered. Not going there. Spartacus jumped onto the armrest, tail flicking like a furry metronome of judgment. Mitch gave him a look. Don't start. The cat blinked slowly, unimpressed. By evening, Mitch had buried himself in work. Editing manuscripts was safe. Predictable. Words behaved better than people. He was halfway through a chapter about a detective with commitment issues when his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Jenny. Mom. Mitch groaned. He considered ignoring it, but that would only make things worse. He swiped to answer. Mitchell. His mother's voice was bright, too bright. How was the reunion? Mitch pinched the bridge of his nose. Fine. Did you see Jenny? He froze. Why would you ask that? Oh, honey, I heard she moved back to town. Isn't that wonderful? You two were so cute together. Mitch's jaw tightened. Mom, I'm just saying, she continued, oblivious to the warning in his tone. You've been single for so long. Jenny's single too. Maybe this is fate. Mom. His voice was sharp now. Stop. There was a pause. Stop what? Stop trying to run my life like I'm still 16. Mitch stood, pacing the living room. I'm 28. I pay my bills. I pay my taxes. I feed my cat. I don't owe anyone a damn thing. Mitchell, no. His voice cracked like a whip. I'm done. If you can't respect me as an adult, then don't call me. I mean it. The silence on the other end was heavy, stunned. Finally, his mother whispered, You don't mean that. I do. Mitch's chest felt tight, but he didn't back down. I'm tired of people dictating my life. I'm not a project. I'm not broken. I'm fine. He didn't wait for her reply. He hung up, tossed the phone onto the couch, and sank down beside Spartacus. The cat blinked at him, then curled up against his leg like nothing had happened. Mitch stared at the ceiling, his pulse still pounding. He'd never raised his voice to his mother before, never drawn a line that sharp. But tonight, he had. And for the first time, he wondered if he'd just burned a bridge he couldn't rebuild. Later that night, his parents' house. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Mitch's mom sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. Her husband, Frank, leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her with the calm patience of a man who'd seen this coming. You pushed him too far, Frank said finally. His voice was low, steady, the kind that carried weight without needing volume. His wife looked up, eyes flashing with indignation. I was just trying to help. He's lonely, Frank. He doesn't even try to meet anyone. Frank shook his head. He's not a kid anymore. You can't keep meddling like this. I'm his mother, she shot back. I want him to be happy. And you think happiness means doing what you want, not what he wants. Frank's tone sharpened, just enough to cut through her defenses. You heard him tonight. He's tired of being treated like a child. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her fingers tightening around the mug. Frank moved closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. Listen to me. You keep pushing, you're going to lose him. For good. Her throat worked as she swallowed hard. He didn't mean that. He did. Frank's gaze was steady, unflinching. You can keep trying to control his life, or you can let him make his own choices, even the ones you don't like. But if you don't back off, you'll drive him away. Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked down at the tea she hadn't touched. I don't want him to be alone. Frank squeezed her shoulder gently. Then trust him to figure it out. He's a good man. He'll find his way, but only if you let him. The silence stretched between them, heavy but necessary. Finally, she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Okay. Frank kissed the top of her head and straightened. Good. Because I like having him around. And I'd rather not lose my son because we couldn't let go. Back in his apartment, Mitch had no idea that his father had just saved the fragile thread between him and his mother. For now, all he knew was that the quiet felt better than the chaos. Chapter 5. The Art of Humiliation. Jenny Carter stared at her phone like it had personally betrayed her. 3 days. 3 days since she sent that message to Mitch, and nothing. Not a single word. She'd checked her phone, so often her thumb had developed muscle memory for disappointment. Maybe he didn't get it, she muttered, pacing her apartment. Maybe he changed his number. Maybe her mom's voice cut through her spiral like a scalpel. Or maybe, Jennifer, he doesn't want to talk to you. Jenny groaned. Thanks for the pep talk, Mom. I'm just saying, her mom replied, voice calm but sharp. You heard him once. Then you ignored him at the reunion. Men don't forget that kind of thing. Jenny flopped onto the couch, burying her face in a pillow. I didn't ignore him. I didn't recognize him. Which is worse, her mom said cheerfully. You made him feel invisible. Jenny sat up, hair sticking out like a frazzled halo. I didn't mean to. Her mom sighed. Intentions don't erase impact, sweetheart. Jenny hated that her mom was right. She hated even more that Mitch's silence was louder than any argument. By noon, Jenny decided she needed a plan. A real plan. Texting wasn't enough. She'd have to see him. Which sounded simple until she realized she had no idea where he lived. She opened her laptop, typed his name into social media, and winced at the barren results. Mitch Adams was apparently the human embodiment of privacy settings. Of course, she muttered. The one time I need a stalker skill set, I'm useless. Finally, she found a clue. A photo from the reunion posted by Marcy. Mitch was in the background, half hidden near the bar. Jenny zoomed in until the pixels gave up. Still handsome, she whispered, then shook her head. Focus, Jenny. 2 hours later, she was parked outside the publishing company where Mitch worked, rehearsing her opening line like a lunatic. Hi, Mitch, remember me? The girl who broke your heart and then forgot your face? She groaned. Perfect. That'll go over great. Her phone buzzed. Marcy again. Please tell me you're not doing something stupid. Jenny typed back. Define stupid. Marcy's reply was instant. Anything involving showing up at his job unannounced. Jenny stared at the building. Okay, so stupid adjacent. Inside, the lobby smelled like coffee and ambition. Jenny smoothed her blouse, squared her shoulders, and approached the receptionist. Hi, she said brightly. I'm here to see Mitch Adams. The receptionist glanced up, unimpressed. Do you have an appointment? Jenny hesitated. Not exactly. The woman's eyebrow arched so high it could have launched into orbit. Then I'm afraid. Jenny leaned in, lowering her voice like they were co-conspirators. It's personal. The receptionist blinked, then picked up the phone. Security? Jenny panicked. Wait. No, I'm not crazy. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Jenny. She turned. Mitch stood there, holding a stack of papers, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Her heart did a somersault. Mitch. Hi. Fancy seeing you here. His expression was unreadable. You tracked me down at work? Jenny laughed nervously. Not tracked. More like, gently located. Mitch stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. Jenny, what do you want? Jenny swallowed hard, every rehearsed line evaporating. I just wanted to talk. His jaw tightened. About what? About us, she said softly. Mitch's eyes flickered. Pain, anger, something else, but his voice stayed cool. There is no us, Jenny. The words hit like a slap, but Jenny forced a smile. Maybe there could be. Mitch shook his head. You should go. Jenny opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded. Okay, but I'm not giving up. His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. That's what I'm afraid of. Jenny walked out of the building with her dignity in tatters and her heart pounding. She'd made a fool of herself. Again. But as she slid into her car, one thought burned brighter than the humiliation. She wasn't done. Chapter 6. The cat knows everything. Mitch Adams closed his office door and leaned against it like he'd just escaped a burning building. His pulse was still hammering from the ambush in the lobby. Jenny. At his job. He dropped the stack of papers on his desk and stared at them like they might offer answers. They didn't. Unbelievable, he muttered, scrubbing a hand over his face. She actually showed up. For 10 years, Jenny had been a ghost, an occasional memory, a name that popped up in conversations he didn't want to have. And now, she was flesh and blood, standing in his lobby, smiling like they were old friends instead of whatever they were. He sat down, staring at the muted gray walls of his office. They'd never felt so claustrophobic. The drive home was worse. Every red light gave his brain time to replay the scene. Jenny's voice, soft, almost pleading. Maybe there could be. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. No, he wasn't doing this. He wasn't opening that door again. Promises were easy. Keeping them, that was where people failed. Jenny had failed him twice. First when she left, then when she didn't even recognize him. He wasn't signing up for strike 3. Spartacus greeted him at the door with a judgmental meow that sounded suspiciously like, "You look like hell. Don't start," Mitch said, tossing his keys on the counter. It's been a day. The cat followed him to the kitchen, tail flicking like a metronome of disapproval. Mitch poured kibble into the bowl, then collapsed onto the couch. Spartacus jumped up beside him, settling in with the smugness of someone who knew they were the favorite child. Mitch stared at the ceiling. She showed up at work. Spartacus blinked slowly, which Mitch interpreted as, "And you didn't hiss? Amateur. I told her to leave," Mitch continued. She said she wasn't giving up. The cat yawned, clearly unimpressed. Mitch sighed. What does she want, Spartacus? Closure? Redemption? A do-over? Spartacus stretched, claws grazing the cushion like punctuation marks. Yeah, Mitch muttered. That's what I thought. Trouble. He grabbed his phone, scrolling past Jenny's unanswered text. It sat there like a landmine, waiting for him to step on it. He could delete it, block her number, end this before it started. But his thumb hovered, traitorous. He remembered her laugh. The way she used to look at him like he was the only person in the room. He also remembered the silence after she left. The hollow ache that took years to fill. Mitch set the phone down and pushed it away like it was radioactive. Nope, not doing this. Spartacus meowed, which Mitch translated as coward. Call it self-preservation, Mitch said. I'm not letting her wreck me again. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Jenny had already cracked the armor. Later that night, Mitch stood on the balcony, city lights flickering like distant stars. He told himself he was fine. He told himself he didn't care. But when the cool wind brushed his face, all he could think was, why now? Chapter 7. Operation. Don't look desperate. Jenny Carter stared at the steering wheel like it had personally betrayed her. The car was parked outside her apartment, but she hadn't moved for 10 minutes. Her cheeks still burned from the humiliation at Mitch's office. The receptionist's raised eyebrow. Mitch's cool voice. You tracked me down at work? She groaned, thunking her forehead against the wheel. Smooth, Jenny. Real smooth. Her phone buzzed. Marcy. Because of course. Did you do it? Jenny typed back. Define do. Marcy's reply was instant. Did you show up at his job like a rom-com heroine with no sense of boundaries? Jenny winced. Maybe. 3 dots blinked ominously before Marcy's next message appeared. Girl. Why? Jenny tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and stomped into her apartment, muttering, "Because texting wasn't working and I panicked, okay?" The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the sound of Jenny's dignity crumbling. She kicked off her heels, flopped onto the couch, and stared at the ceiling. She'd imagined this so differently. Mitch smiling, maybe laughing at her boldness. Instead, he looked like he wanted to call security. Jenny grabbed a throw pillow and screamed into it. Later, she called Marcy because suffering alone was overrated. Marcy answered on the first ring. "Tell me everything." Jenny sighed. He was polite. Sort of. Cold. "He told me to leave." Ouch. And then he said, "There is no us." Marcy whistled. Double ouch. Jenny groaned. "I sounded pathetic, Marcy. I said maybe there could be." There was a pause. Then Marcy said gently, "Jen, maybe you need to let this go." Jenny sat up, clutching the pillow like a lifeline. "No, I can't. I know I messed up, but I still," her voice cracked, "I still love him." Marcy was quiet for a long moment. "Then you need a better plan than ambushing him at work." Jenny sniffed. "Like what?" Marcy's tone turned sly. "Something that doesn't scream desperate ex-girlfriend." Jenny perked up. "I'm listening." By midnight, Jenny had a notebook open and a pen in hand. At the top of the page, she wrote in bold letters, "Operation, don't look desperate. Step 1. Apologize without sounding pathetic. Step 2. Show him I've changed. Step 3. Make him laugh." Humor was their thing once. Step 4. Avoid stalking vibes at all costs. She tapped the pen against her teeth. "Easy," she muttered. "Totally easy." Her phone buzzed again. Marcy sending a meme of a raccoon holding a bouquet with the caption, "You, tomorrow." Jenny laughed despite herself. Not helping. The next morning, Jenny stood in front of her closet, debating outfits like her life depended on it. She wasn't going to see Mitch today, probably, but what if she ran into him? She settled on jeans and a soft sweater. Casual. Approachable. Not I'm trying too hard to win back the man I broke. As she headed out for coffee, she whispered to herself, "Okay, Jenny. No more disasters. Just baby steps." But deep down, she knew one thing. She wasn't giving up. Chapter 8. The Meddler Strikes Back. Mitch Adams was halfway through editing a manuscript about Viking romance. Don't ask. When his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, expecting a work email. It wasn't. "Mom." He debated ignoring it. He lost. "Hey, Mom," he said, keeping his voice neutral. "Mitchell." Her tone was bright, which meant trouble. "How was the reunion?" Mitch pinched the bridge of his nose. "Fine. Fine," she repeated, like he'd just confessed to a felony. "Did you see Jenny?" Mitch froze. "Why would you ask that?" "Oh, honey, I heard she moved back to town." "Isn't that wonderful?" Mitch stared at the ceiling. "Mom, she's single, you know," his mother continued, oblivious to the warning in his voice. "And successful. Interior design, I think. You two were so cute together." Mitch closed his eyes. "We were teenagers. Love is timeless," she declared, like she was quoting a Hallmark card. "Mom, please. Do you want me to invite her over for dinner?" Mitch sat up so fast his chair squeaked. "No, absolutely not." There was a pause, then his mom's voice softened. "Mitchell, you've been alone for so long." "I'm fine," he said firmly. "I have a job. I have Spartacus. I'm good." His mom sighed. The kind that carried 10 years of maternal guilt trips. "You're not good, honey. You're safe. There's a difference." Mitch gritted his teeth. "Mom, I mean it. No meddling." "Of course," she said sweetly. The kind of sweet that meant she was already planning something. Mitch hung up before she could weaponize nostalgia any further. That night, Mitch sat on the couch, Spartacus sprawled across his lap like a furry dictator. "She's going to do it," Mitch muttered. "She's going to meddle." Spartacus blinked slowly, which Mitch translated as, "You're doomed." He scratched the cat's ears, staring at the muted glow of the TV. Jenny's face flashed in his mind again. Her smile, her voice, the way she said, "Maybe there could be." He hated that it stirred something in him. Something he'd buried years ago. "No," he said aloud. "Not happening." Spartacus yawned, unimpressed. Mitch leaned back, closing his eyes. He told himself he was in control. He told himself he wasn't curious. But when his phone buzzed with a new message, his heart jumped before his brain could stop it. It wasn't Jenny. It was his mom. "Dinner Sunday. Don't be late." Mitch groaned. "I'm walking into a trap." Spartacus purred like he agreed. Chapter 9. The Fine Art of Not Giving Up. Jenny Carter had never considered herself stubborn. Determined, sure. Focused, absolutely. But stubborn? That was a word people used when they didn't understand the plan. Except, she was starting to suspect she didn't have a plan anymore. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, mocking her with its silence. Mitch hadn't blocked her. She checked, because of course she did. But he also hadn't replied to her last message. Or the one before that. Or the one before that. 3 texts in 2 weeks. That was reasonable, right? Not stalker level. Not yet. Jenny groaned and dropped her head onto the counter. "Why is this so hard?" Her mom's voice floated from the speakerphone like a judgmental ghost. "Because you broke his heart, Jennifer. Twice." Jenny lifted her head. "I didn't mean to." "Intentions don't erase impact," her mom said, for the 100th time. "You need to show him you've changed." Jenny stared at the ceiling. "How? He won't even talk to me." "Then make him see you," her mom said simply. Jenny blinked. "What does that even mean?" "Figure it out. You're creative. Use it." The line went dead, leaving Jenny with nothing but her mother's cryptic advice and a growing sense of desperation. By noon, Jenny was sitting in her car outside Mitch's apartment building, questioning every life choice that led her here. She wasn't going to knock on his door. That was crazy. She was just in the neighborhood, coincidentally, with coffee and muffins, his favorite kind. Probably. She rehearsed her opening line for the 15th time. Hi, Mitch. I brought muffins because carbs fix everything? No. Too weird. Hi, Mitch. I thought you might like some company? Nope. Creepy. She was mid-rehearsal when the front door opened and Mitch walked out, Spartacus's carrier in one hand and a look of mild annoyance on his face. Jenny froze. Mitch froze. Spartacus, judging from the carrier, probably also froze. Mitch, Jenny blurted, waving like an idiot. Hi. Fancy seeing you here. His expression was pure disbelief. Jenny, what are you doing? Jenny held up the coffee like it was a peace treaty. I brought caffeine. Mitch stared at her for a long moment, then sighed. Jenny, I know, she said quickly, words tumbling out like marbles. This looks bad. Really bad. But I swear I'm not stalking you. You're outside my apartment, Mitch said flatly. Jenny winced. Okay, maybe a little stalking adjacent. Mitch shook his head, adjusting the carrier. Spartacus let out a loud, offended meow, as if to say this woman again. Jenny crouched to peek through the carrier door. Hi, Spartacus. Remember me? The cat blinked slowly, the universal feline gesture for I'd rather eat my own tail. Jenny straightened, forcing a smile. So, vet appointment? Mitch's jaw tightened. Jenny, what do you want? Jenny swallowed hard. A chance. Just one chance to explain. Mitch's eyes flickered. Pain, frustration, something softer, but his voice stayed cool. I don't think that's a good idea. Jenny stepped closer, desperation bleeding into her tone. Please. I know I messed up. Twice. But I never stopped caring about you. Mitch looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. I have to go. He walked past her, leaving Jenny standing on the sidewalk with coffee in one hand, muffins in the other, and her heart somewhere near her shoes. Jenny sat in her car afterward, staring at the steering wheel like it held answers. She'd made a fool of herself. Again. But as humiliation burned through her, one thought refused to die. She wasn't done. Chapter 10, Cracks in the Armor. Mitch Adams wasn't sure what irritated him more. The fact that Jenny showed up outside his apartment like a rom-com gone wrong, or the fact that part of him didn't hate it. He slammed the car door harder than necessary after the vet visit, Spartacus glaring at him from the carrier like you're embarrassing us both. Don't start. Mitch muttered, carrying the cat inside. You saw her. Coffee. Muffins. Like carbs can fix 10 years of bad decisions. Spartacus blinked slowly, unimpressed. Mitch set the carrier down and opened the door. Spartacus strutted out with the kind of disdain only cats and royalty could pull off. Yeah, Mitch said, tossing his keys on the counter. I should have ignored her. I should have walked the other way. But no, I had to stop and talk. He scrubbed a hand over his face, the memory replaying in vivid detail. Jenny's hopeful smile, her voice soft when she said she never stopped caring. He hated how those words lodged in his chest like splinters. The apartment was quiet except for Spartacus crunching kibble like judgment incarnate. Mitch sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. He'd spent years building walls, stacking bricks of mistrust and mortar made of old pain. Jenny had been the reason for every layer. And now, she was chipping at them with muffins. Mitch laughed bitterly. What kind of idiot falls for that? Spartacus jumped onto the armrest, tail flicking. Mitch looked at him. Don't say it. The cat blinked, which Mitch interpreted as you already know. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcy, Jenny's best friend and apparently the unofficial reunion gossip correspondent. She's trying, Mitch. Don't make her beg. Mitch stared at the message, jaw tightening. He didn't owe Jenny anything. Not forgiveness. Not friendship. Definitely not a second chance. Except, he remembered the way her voice cracked when she said please. He tossed the phone aside like it burned. Nope. Not doing this. An hour later, Mitch was still on the couch, Spartacus curled against his leg like a smug therapist. Fine, Mitch muttered. Maybe I'll talk to her. Once. Just to end this. Spartacus purred, which Mitch took as approval, or maybe amusement. Don't look at me like that. Mitch said. This isn't about feelings. It's closure. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. Chapter 11, Coffee and Confessions. Jenny Carter stared at her phone like it had just delivered a miracle. Mitch, fine. One coffee. Tomorrow. Noon. She reread the message 5 times, half expecting it to vanish like a mirage. It didn't. It sat there, smug and real, and Jenny felt her pulse spike like she'd just won the lottery. Okay, she whispered, pacing her apartment. Okay, don't freak out. It's just coffee. Casual. Totally normal. Except nothing about this was normal. She'd spent weeks trying to get Mitch to talk to her, and now that he'd agreed, her brain was staging a full-scale panic attack. The next day, Jenny arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early because punctuality was her love language, or maybe desperation was. She picked a corner table, ordered 2 coffees, and tried not to look like someone rehearsing an apology speech in her head. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcy. Don't blow this. And for God's sake, don't cry. Jenny typed back. Not planning to cry. Planning to charm. Marcy's reply was instant. Charm died the day you stalked him with muffins. Jenny groaned and shoved the phone away. When Mitch walked in, Jenny forgot how to breathe. He looked good. Better than good. Crisp button down, sleeves rolled up, That quiet confidence she'd never noticed in high school, but now couldn't ignore. He spotted her, hesitated, then walked over with the kind of calm that made her feel like a hurricane in comparison. "Jenny," he said, voice even. "Mitch," she replied, standing too quickly and nearly knocking over the coffee. "Smooth." He sat, folding his hands on the table like this was a business meeting. Jenny forced a smile. "Thanks for coming." Mitch's expression didn't soften. "You said you wanted to talk." Jenny nodded, heart pounding. "I did. I owe you an apology." His brow lifted slightly. "For which part?" Jenny winced. "All of it. The breakup, the reunion, the muffins." A flicker of amusement crossed his face before disappearing. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did," Jenny said quickly. "Because I hurt you. And I hate that. I thought I was doing the right thing back then, letting you go so you could live your life without me holding you back. But I was wrong." Mitch's jaw tightened. "You didn't just let me go, Jenny. You erased me. 10 years later, you looked right through me like I didn't exist." Jenny swallowed hard, shame burning her throat. "I know. And I'm sorry. I was so caught up in hosting, I didn't really look. And when I realized what I'd done," she shook her head. "I felt sick." Silence stretched between them, heavy and sharp. Jenny gripped her coffee cup like it was a lifeline. Finally, Mitch spoke. "Why now?" Jenny blinked. "What? Why try to fix this now?" he asked, voice calm but edged. "You've had 10 years. Jenny hesitated, then said the only truth she had. "Because I never stopped loving you." The words hung in the air like a confession in a cathedral. Mitch's eyes flickered. Shock, anger, something softer, but his face stayed guarded. "Jenny," he began, then stopped, exhaling slowly. "I don't know what to do with that." Jenny leaned forward, voice trembling. "You don't have to do anything. Just let me prove I'm not the same girl who hurt you." Mitch looked at her for a long moment, then stood. Jenny's heart plummeted. But instead of walking away, he said quietly, "I'll think about it." And then he left, leaving Jenny staring at the empty chair, her coffee cold and her hope flickering like a candle in the wind. Jenny sat there for a long time, replaying every word, every look. It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. It was something. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 12. The Weight of Words. Mitch Adams had never been good at sitting still, but tonight he felt like a statue, frozen on his couch, staring at the wall like it held answers. Spartacus perched on the armrest, tail flicking lazily, the picture of feline indifference. Jenny's words echoed in his head like a stubborn song lyric. "Because I never stopped loving you." He rubbed his temples, trying to shake it off. He'd spent years building a life without her. Quiet, steady, predictable. No drama. No heartbreak. Just work, coffee, and a cat who judged him less than most humans. And now? One sentence had cracked the armor he'd spent a decade forging. He stood, pacing the living room like a man trying to outwalk his own thoughts. She'd looked sincere, scared even. And that smile, God, that smile still had the power to knock the wind out of him. But sincerity didn't erase history. She'd left him once. She'd forgotten him once. What was next? Mitch stopped at the window, staring at the city lights. He wasn't angry anymore. That was the problem. Anger was easy. Anger kept you safe. What he felt now was dangerous. Spartacus jumped onto the windowsill, fixing him with a slow blink. Mitch sighed. "Don't start." The cat tilted its head, as if to say you're hopeless. Mitch leaned against the glass. "She says she never stopped loving me. But what does that even mean? Love without trust is just noise." Spartacus yawned, clearly unimpressed with his philosophical crisis. Mitch laughed softly. "You're right. I'm overthinking." Except he wasn't. He was standing at the edge of something he wasn't sure he could survive. His phone buzzed. A text from Jenny. "Thank you for meeting me today. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I hope you'll let me earn one." Mitch stared at the screen, thumb hovering. He could ignore it. He could shut the door and walk away. But he didn't want to. That was the truth he'd been avoiding all night. He typed slowly, each word feeling like a gamble. "I don't know if I can give you what you're asking, but I'll meet you again. One more time." He hit send before he could change his mind. Spartacus meowed, which Mitch interpreted as finally. Mitch sank onto the couch, heart pounding. He wasn't sure if this was closure or the start of something dangerous. Either way, tomorrow would tell. Chapter 13. The last word. Mitch's POV. Mitch Adams hated waiting. He'd agreed to meet Jenny again, and now he was sitting in the same cafe as before, nursing a coffee that tasted like regret and second chances. He told himself this was closure. One last conversation to put everything to rest. But deep down, he knew that was a lie. When Jenny walked in, the air shifted. She wasn't dressed to impress. Jeans, a soft sweater, hair pulled back, but she looked real, vulnerable. And somehow, that hit harder than any grand gesture ever could. "Mitch," she said softly, sliding into the chair across from him. "Jenny." His voice was steady, but his pulse wasn't. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the cafe filling the gaps. Finally, Mitch spoke. "You said you never stopped loving me." Jenny nodded, eyes bright but steady. "I meant it." Mitch exhaled slowly. "Love isn't the problem. Trust is." "I know," Jenny said. "And I don't expect you to trust me overnight. I just want the chance to earn it." Mitch studied her face, the sincerity, the fear, the hope. 10 years ago, she'd broken him. But right now, she wasn't the same girl who left. And maybe he wasn't the same boy who waited. "Jenny," he said quietly, "I don't know if this will work." Her lips curved in a trembling smile. Then let's not call it work. Let's call it coffee. And see where it goes. Mitch stared at her for a long moment, then laughed, soft, unexpected, like a weight lifting. Coffee, huh? Jenny grinned. It's a start. Jenny's POV. When Mitch laughed, Jenny felt something crack open inside her. A door she thought had slammed shut forever. She didn't need promises. She didn't need guarantees. She just needed this moment. Okay, she said, smiling through the nerves. Coffee. And maybe muffins. Mitch groaned. You're never living that down. Jenny laughed, the sound mingling with his, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a memory. It felt like something new. Later that night, Mitch's apartment, Spartacus watched from his perch as Mitch set down his keys, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Don't look at me like that, Mitch said, scratching the cat's head. It's just coffee. Spartacus blinked slowly, the universal feline gesture for sure. Keep telling yourself that. Mitch chuckled, sinking onto the couch. For the first time in a long time, the apartment didn't feel so quiet. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Epilogue. 1 year later, trust is a funny thing. It takes years to build, seconds to destroy, and rebuilding? That's the hardest part of all. Jenny Carter knew that better than anyone. She stood in Mitch's kitchen, stirring sugar into her coffee like it was a sacred ritual. Spartacus lounged on the counter, watching her with the same skeptical eyes he'd worn the first time she showed up here months ago. Back then, Mitch barely spoke to her. Polite, distant, guarded. Every word felt like walking barefoot across glass. Now, he was in the living room, flipping through a manuscript, his voice drifting in occasionally with a casual, "Coffee's ready." Or, "Did you feed Spartacus?" Small things. Ordinary things. The kind of things Jenny had learned to treasure. Because ordinary meant progress. It hadn't been easy. The first few weeks after her disastrous ambush at his office were brutal. Mitch ignored her texts. Calls went unanswered. When he finally agreed to meet for coffee, it was like talking to a stranger wearing Mitch's face. He kept his hands folded, his tone clipped, his eyes wary. Jenny didn't push. She listened. She apologized, really apologized, without excuses. And then she did the hardest thing. She gave him space. Months passed. She sent the occasional message, never demanding, never guilt-tripping. When Mitch replied, she kept it light. When he didn't, she let it go. Slowly, the ice cracked. A shared joke here. A photo of Spartacus there. A cautious invitation to lunch that Mitch accepted with the kind of hesitation that made Jenny's heart ache. Every step forward felt like climbing a mountain barefoot. But she climbed anyway. Now, a year later, they weren't back together. Not officially. Labels felt too fragile, too heavy for something still in repair. But they were something. Friends, maybe. More than friends, sometimes. Jenny didn't rush it. She couldn't. Because trust wasn't a sprint. It was a marathon with no finish line. She learned that rebuilding wasn't about grand gestures. It was about consistency. Showing up when you say you will. Listening when it matters. Proving, day after day, that you mean what you say. And Mitch? He'd let her in, just enough. He laughed more now. He teased her about her terrible parking skills. He even let her feed Spartacus, which Jenny considered a minor miracle. But she could still see it sometimes. The flicker in his eyes when old memories surfaced. The quiet pause before he answered certain questions. The invisible wall that hadn't completely come down. Jenny didn't resent it. She understood it. Because trust, once broken, never comes back the same. It's patched, mended, stitched together with effort and time. Stronger in some places, thinner in others. She glanced toward the living room. Mitch looked up, met her gaze, and smiled. A small, real smile that warmed her more than any coffee ever could. Jenny smiled back, her heart steady for the first time in years. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was worth every second.